my name's June. Welcome to another video on my channel. Today I'll be talking about a film I saw recently in the cinema called The Gentleman by Guy Ritchie, who you may or may not know. I'm a fan of his London gangster films, and this is another one of those. Just so you know which ones I'm talking about, the first one and my favourite until now is Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels. Then you have Snatch and Rock and Roller, and now The Gentleman, of course. So right out of the gate, what I find great is that Guy Ritchie can make these films with more or less the same topic, you could say, but still manages to make them all unique. So despite them all being set in London, and despite them all being gangster films, every single one of these films feels individual. They all have their own character, so it's great. You can enjoy them all separate from each other, independently from each other. You don't have to see all four of them. And I think if you're into this kind of film, so if you like humorous films with many characters, some gangster stuff, and some twists and turns, I'm sure one of these films would be to your liking. So, The Gentleman, that's what I'm talking about. I might do the other ones some other time if I feel like it, if there's a demand for it, but for now I'll be talking about The Gentleman because I saw that recently now. So, if you don't know, it stars Hugh Grant, Charlie Hunnam and Matthew McConaughey, amongst other people, but those three I would say are the main characters. Hugh Grant plays an investigative journalist slash paparazzi, I suppose you could call him. He gets the job from his boss to stalk Matthew McConaughey's character, the big drug lord, to find, well, dirt on him and all sorts of things. And the story starts off with Hugh Grant's character actually approaching Matthew McConaughey's right-hand man, who is Charlie Hunnam. And so Hugh Grant approaches him to offer all the evidence that he has gathered, because instead of the £150,000 that he would have gotten from his boss, he offers it to the drug lord to say that he would rather have 20 million from him. I suppose he's trying to, you could argue he's sort of trying to do the right thing, trying to clear his conscience, but you're talking about drug lords and stuff, so I'm not quite sure if that analogy really works. But anyway, that's how the film starts off. What happens afterwards is Charlie Hunnam's character, he tries to find out how much Hugh Grant knows, how much the reporter knows, and so he lets him talk about what he's observed and what he's found out. So he just tells his whole story. And it's interesting in that way, the story, usually you'd have flashbacks appearing throughout, or you'd have them appearing every now and then to show you stuff that happened before. In this film, they actually do it a bit the other way around, so the majority of it is actually a flashback, and then you only have scenes from the present interjected into that. Flashbacks, to me, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. I talked about it in my review for Birds of Prey. I already talked about that. In this film, I felt it worked really well. Also because it's not overdone in that sense, because I like it the other way around actually, that they show you the majority and then they cut to the present to just sort of explain why this is important or what the consequence of it was. So I like the way it was done. I felt it was natural, it flowed very nicely. You had basically just one guy telling his story, but it was done very well. Remaining on Hugh Grant's character for a minute there, I thought that he was very funny. I'm not quite sure, as I live in Austria, I'm not too savvy about exactly which accent comes from where, but I really enjoyed his one in this film. I believe, at least from what I saw on the screen, that Hugh Grant had a lot of fun acting in this film because his character, frankly, was a lot of fun, always making various remarks and that, and being very cheeky, you could call it. You could also tell that it was a bit of hubris as well, his character, because obviously he thinks he's got all the evidence, he's got all the cards in his hands, and as you can expect, I suppose it's not a surprise that it doesn't turn out quite as much as he hoped it would, or the way he hoped it would. And but I won't spoil anything, don't worry. The other main characters, as I mentioned, are Charlie Hunnam, who plays this right-hand man. He's sort of this gruff type. He's a bodyguard, you could call him as well, I suppose, that kind of type. And he's got some very good scenes in it as well. He has one particular one where he's talking to a group of drug addicts. He's trying to get one girl to come back with him. He wants to, well, he doesn't want to, but he has to reunite her with her parents. and he's got a sort of monologue there, a monologue scene, which is quite good. I liked the way he showed that. I mean, up until that point, he just seems like he just does this job and he's good at it, etc. But in this monologue, you can see that there is sort of an edge to him as well. He's not quite as nice, I'll call it, as you think he is. You're not quite sure about him at times, because in the present day scenes, you've got him with Hugh Grant, and he's just this guy, he's listening, he's wearing a nice cardigan, and he's listening to Hugh Grant's character just explaining everything about what he saw and what he witnessed and documented and that. And so although you do know pretty much from the start that he's part of this gang, I'll call it, he doesn't quite seem that way. So I thought it was quite good, the way he portrayed it. I wasn't too sure about what he is or how bad he is. I'm assuming that was the intention behind it. And the last main character for me was Matthew McConaughey, who plays the drug lord, who is an American in this, so that was a bit interesting to me. I mean, obviously you've got all these British characters, and there you have this American. His character supposedly in the film, he came to Britain and built his drug empire using millionaires' homes as a place where he could sort of build bunkers underneath on their ground, on their property. He built bunkers where he would grow the weed. It's explained in the film that they're very secretive, so you can't really find them. Their locations aren't known to anyone. He's great in it. I mean, Matthew McConaughey, I like him. I feel he's a good actor. He's good in this as well. He seems a very earnest character. So he seems, although he's obviously the drug lord, he seems to be portraying, well, as the film implies, the gentleman. So he's like the gentleman criminal, I suppose you could call it, with honour and such things. It portrays that very well. At the same time, he also shows that he also has another side to him. He also mentions in the film itself, he makes references to being a lion, so he also shows some of that, and he does that very well. You can see some very good scenes where you can see his anger sort of bubbling through. So the story is basically the story that Hugh Grant's character, the reporter, is telling, is that the drug lord, he tries to sell his business, he wants to move on, and he's having some trouble doing that because of various incidents that make it all difficult for him. Otherwise, it seems to be a very straightforward deal, but then suddenly things start to happen. And that's basically what you're following through the whole story, and you see all these incidents, and it's pieced together quite well. You have various gangs, I'll call them, various groups of people. That's one of the things I like about these films, that Guy Ritchie, he packs them full of characters, but it doesn't feel like there are too many, despite there being so many. They're all very well written, they feel very natural, they're very fleshed out, so they feel like actual people. So their dialogue, it just works. It doesn't feel like they're in a studio or someplace filming and it's a screenplay, etc. Just all the dialogue, it seems to me, it seems very natural. Speaking of which, the humour is brilliant in this film. Guy Ritchie's films, I find them all to be very funny. I don't know if it's he himself who is such a funny guy, I hope he is, or if he gets someone to help him write these things, but the humour is so good, it just comes naturally. You don't actually see any particularly funny moments coming, but they just happen, and all the characters are written so well that basically they're all joining in. The humour comes from all sides, and it's very good. You have one particular scene I enjoyed a lot, was Colin Farrell's character. Colin Farrell, by the way, he's in this as well. It's actually the first time I've seen him speaking with an Irish accent in a film. I don't think I've ever seen that before from him. Or maybe once before. I think he does it in Bruges as well. I'm not quite sure. But apart from that, this was the most notable time. He's got a really strong Irish accent, and it's quite good. He plays a boxing coach. He's got a boxing club, and he's trying to help young adults get their way in life. And that's part of the story, because that group of guys, they get into a spot of trouble, and he sort of tries to settle the whole thing, make amends for it and such. And there's one particular funny scene where he's talking with one of the guys who's wondering whether this one comment towards him was racist or not, and he explains to him that doesn't sound very exciting the way I'm telling it now, but it's a really funny scene. he's explaining to him. I won't repeat what it is. I'll let you be surprised when you see it. But it was a very, very funny scene, and his whole demeanour, and if it was the whole delivery, it's so deadpan, and it really helps with the humour. It's really good. Speaking of which, that scene, it made me think about afterwards how they translate these films into various languages. Living in Austria, I've seen a few films in German, and usually humour does not translate very well. I try to see films in their original language. If I don't speak it, I'll watch it with subtitles. And for this film, I definitely recommend that as well, because I don't think that British humour, and particularly the one in this film, translates very well into other languages. The film is actually, it's just under 2 hours. It's interesting because going out of it, coming out after seeing it, I thought, to me, the film, it felt a lot longer than it actually was. And I don't mean that in a bad way, as in it kept dragging on. Instead, there was just so much packed into this film. There was so much happening in it. Good things, entertaining things that kept the story going without it becoming convoluted or complex. So he's got a gift. It's just like with his other films. You have so many characters, so much happening, but it doesn't become too much, and you're just delighted to see more of them. Because at some point I remember thinking, surely the runtime is just about finished. So I was expecting the end would come in the next few minutes or so. And then something new would happen, and you'd think, oh great, it's continuing, the story's going on, we get to spend more time with these characters. And that happened actually quite a few times. So the film, to me, just by the content of it and what happens, felt like it was a good 30 to 40 minutes longer than it actually was. So I guess, again, that's props to Guy Ritchie, who writes a film in a way that makes you feel like you're getting a lot more than you are actually getting in that way. I hope that makes sense, that explanation, but that's what it felt like to me. And that's one of the reasons I actually think, I mean, I know he's done other films. I enjoyed his Sherlock Holmes films. I'm not too sure about the others, but I would say that for me, I think he should just spend the rest of his life making these films, always having different looks, views at the gangster scene and stuff like that, because I think they're all highly enjoyable. This film, for instance, I am definitely going to get on Blu-ray to put in my collection because I think it's excellent. You've got, as I mentioned, you've got great characters, you've got great acting, the story's really good, very entertaining. You have music. The music, Guy Ritchie also has a good selection of music. It's the same in this film. He uses some very good songs that fit very well to the scenes that he's shooting. There's only one female character that stood out to me in this film, and that's actually the drug lord's wife. I thought it was great because she has a business in her own right. She has a car repair shop, but apparently only for really high class cars. And she shows in the film that she's also not somebody you like to mess with. So she's also a very strong presence there. I thought it was highly entertaining watching their relationship. That was quite well done too. The two, although they didn't share as much time on screen, it felt very, very real. They had good chemistry with each other. So yeah, I quite like that. So again, to summarise, you've got great music, great acting, great characters. You've got a good story. If you've seen other films by him, definitely watch this one. You won't want to miss out. And if you have seen it, I would love to know what you felt about it, or if there's anything that I mentioned that you see differently or so. Let me know in the comments down below. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please feel free to like it and subscribe to the channel for more weekly videos. And I'll see you next time. Take care.